What is up?
Hey
Hey.
everyone.
Hello.
Looks like we got some people rolling in. We can wait a couple minutes.
Is it hump day? Yes, it is. Happy hump day. And it's nice to see it, the attendees are full of real humans and not a bunch of note takers. So this is great. Real humans.
Love it.
And I even did my hair for y'all today. So if any of you haven't seen me, you can just have this as your only impression of me ever.
Not your AI outtakes on LinkedIn.
I gotta get on that an AI Zoom face because mine's meant for radio.
meant meant for podcasting.
No YouTube versions.
Yeah, that's why we stopped doing them.
Sometimes my biggest shock is like when I first meet someone, but before the meeting, saw like their LinkedIn photo and I see them like, so I'm like, oh, you different. Not anyone here, not anyone here.
While we get everyone in here, I'd love to see in the chat what's the split between product marketers and non-product marketers.
Well, that's a good one. Yeah, we're
Very
curious.
keen question to ask.
Where are you coming from? What's the attribution here?
Yeah, how many are going to be on our side and then how many are going to be on Nikiya's side is what I'm trying to wonder.
Yeah, yeah. So we can edit out those parts out in the podcast. Everybody was on our side.
So yeah, we won.
All
You know?
right. I think it's
I think I'm
pronounced
gonna be
Frankie.
outnumbered.
Let's go.
I'm gonna say Frankie, but I see an I at the end. So if it's Frankie or Frank, I said we here with you.
Oh, we got a Nikiya fan. Yeah.
Oh, look at that!
So put her up on the
Carly!
Jumbotron.
Nikiya's bestie. Uh-oh. We're in
Okay.
trouble.
I got
Well, we got a
backup
win over
now.
Sal. So
Oh, what up, Sal? Oh yeah, yeah, you're
uh,
not a marketer.
Oh, maybe not a marketer. I like Sal.
oh, well, I'm not a marketer, so we're good company.
Hey, Jacob, that's what we friends, man. As
So
I'm
where did
wearing
that idea
my,
come
I'm a
from?
marketer. God, just what's? Can you guys get the short version because I tend to be very verbose.
20 minutes later, we're like,
this is this is the webinar.
I feel like we can get
Yeah,
started. Yeah,
yeah.
let's do
Yeah.
it. Thank you all so much for coming today. I'm super excited to be joined by Jacob Sussman, our CEO at BX Studio, Nikiya Griffith, our Director of Organic Growth, and Zach, Eric, and Gab from We're Not Marketers. Today, we will break down the push and pull between product marketing and SEO, who owns the website. At the end, we'll do a quick Q&A, and you guys can throw those questions in the Q&A box, not the chat, but feel free to use the chat while we're talking. So, how about we start off with just who should own the website? Who wants to kick us off?
Oh, I'm jumping in because I have a very firm answer. That should be product marketing. Um, I think a lot of people think the website is like the main place to bring people to, is like your main asset, and with that, there's no better place to actually get your message across. And then I think there's no better way to convolute, dry up, and take all the personality out of that message
oof.
if you want to go ahead and add a bunch of keywords and SEO and things that don't really attribute to people getting a clear understanding of what's going on with your product and why you're different from the 5, 10, 20 other people in your space.
All right, so I got to jump in here. That was a hot take. So I would argue that there should be joint ownership. And if SEO is being executed really well,
that your SEO specialist, your content team should be working really closely with your product marketing team so that that message doesn't get, watered down and you're still using the correct language and everybody is aligned. So I think it's actually more about who owns which sections of the website. So your blog, for example, I would pretty much argue that content and SEO should own the blog. And product marketing should definitely be primary owner on key landing pages. So like service and product landing pages, things like that. Nobody's ever going to agree on who owns the homepage, but I think the key is like knowing who the owner is in different sections of the website.
I like
I'm
that
gonna
If
I'm
take.
gonna
you
chime.
don't have SEO owning part of the website, no one's going to end up on the website. You're not. It's like if a website exists in the forest alone, does it even exist? Like,
Mm. Well, here's another take. I think piggyback on Eric here and to give another perspective. Yes, there should be split ownership when things go right, but typically when things go wrong, who's owning the blame?
hmm.
So we can't have one hand and ignore the other. So if product marketers typically are the ones who are owning the message, and if something doesn't go right, and they're going to end up finger pointed at, I think it's also fair that we own the website and take ownership of how the message should be reflected across all web pages.
I feel like there's some juicy stories there. Like, what have been some like website blow-ups where we've got to point fingers? It's like, I bet it was due to product marketing if we were to like pull back the curtain on that anecdote you're sharing a bit. Like,
Oh, Jacob, where do we start? Well, the stories will unfold. The stories will unfold, but I'm gonna hold off right there. I'm gonna sit in the corner and gotta take a quick water break.
yeah, I gotta check with our lawyer before I answer this one.
Well, that's actually a good question. So, Nikiya, have you ever been in that situation where the website's not converting people into opportunities and you're getting blamed for it?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, coming from the agency side, owning SEO, if things aren't ranking, if we're not getting traffic, if the website isn't driving revenue at the end of the day, I'm gonna get questions about that. So I've definitely gotten some questions about why things aren't working when pages got changed and content or SEO wasn't looped in before those changes were made. I think especially with the blog, again, like that's what content and SEO typically historically has largely owned. Like you've got to be responsible for that, right?
Yeah, I think, and I like how you carve that out too. I very much agree. Like, I don't think product marketing should have too much influence in what's going into the blog, other than maybe the actual topics that are being talked about, but the outputs and how that's framed up. I know me personally, I would feel like I'm wandering around in a forest trying to set up a blog page and make sure that it's something that people can get to, and it's not just a vanity tag up in our navigation somewhere.
Yeah, that being
I'd
said,
like,
I do think working with product marketing is super important when you're setting up a good writer's wiki. So this is something that I think really good content production systems, you have what I refer to as a writer's wiki. It's their guide to product messaging. It's the ICP. It's how you talk about the brand. And we expect every writer who's working on that account to follow that very closely. And we work with product marketing to make sure that that messaging is always, updated and correct.
That's a good, that's a very good solution because I used to be, the subject matter expert who's always jumping in with content writers, and you always just have a ton of work to do because you want to push those new articles. So yeah, I think, how do you call that? An article wiki or a content wiki?
Yeah, like a writer's wiki. So it's got, it's kind of it's a pretty thorough guide, but there's a whole section in there on ICP, brand messaging, language we use, things we do not say, It goes everything from like high level brand messaging to very micro, like this is how we use punctuation. Do we use an M dash? We could have a whole argument about that, but yeah.
Awesome.
Hmm.
so how come that's not common knowledge, like from like a product marketing standpoint? Because this, like, I've heard of content guides. Like, is that what you're describing then, essentially?
Sort of, but it's broader than that. I'd say it's both broader and deeper than that. So, content guide, I think when we typically think of that, we're thinking of more of like a style guide for writing. Writer's Wiki is how can they talk about the brand in the right way? So they need to understand how to sell your product too, because at the end of the day, the website is supposed to generate revenue for your business, right? So you have to be talking about the product, and the writer needs to know your sales prop. They need to have key insights from sales calls. So when we're setting that up too, something we ask for is like if you have recordings of sales calls, if you have actual conversations with your customers, we want to know the actual words your customers are using. These are the same things that product marketers are really focused on, and that's important for content too. I think for me, specifically, a lot of my work has been about kind of breaking down those barriers between product marketing and content and SEO, because we should all be on the same team. And SEO works really well when product marketing is like working really closely with content and SEO.
It's reminding me, and it's a free plug, but it's reminding me of the episode we had with Lashay Lewis. And she was talking about the way how, bottom of the funnel content and SEO can go so much further when it's done with a solid product marketing base because you understand all of the context behind it too. Yeah, sorry about the free plug. Check it out.
Well,
So like the kid. Oh, Eric, go ahead, man.
no, and I was going to say, so Nikiya, I've never actually worked with someone who knows SEO as like it's the back of their hand. It's normally kind of a side quest of theirs. So I don't have any perspective on how it is to work very well with someone like that. What is your perspective on, all right, I've got a product marketer to work with. What's your dream relationship like with them?
Oh, that's a great question. So honestly, if we have a really strong relationship with a product marketer, I want to download all of the information I can from them day one. So all of your internal guides, how often you're changing product messaging, and I want to build a really good relationship there so that as product messaging is evolving, when you're launching a new product, you come to me early so I can think about, oh, if we're launching this new product, for example, what keywords should we be thinking about for that? And how can we kind of marry what we really know we want to and need to say from a product standpoint with keywords? And I think keywords are, great, they're important, but it's really about figuring out how we get the message you want to relay more eyeballs, right? That's the purpose of SEO. It shouldn't be eyeballs first, and then you figure out the message. Otherwise, you're just going to be saying the same thing everybody else is saying, and you can't differentiate. And in today's world with SEO and AEO or GEO or whatever we want to call it, that is super not going to work well. So really having a good message dialed in first helps SEO, and SEO should kind of be like a holistic add-on across the whole website. When SEO is done well, they're partnering with everybody else in marketing and just helping their efforts get seen by more people.
So then, Nikiya, like, what do we do? Like, we as product marketers, what are we doing wrong? So I can give you a real example. Is that in a previous in-house like solo role, I remember my head of marketing gave me a list of keywords and said, "Hey, this is what we want to rank for." That was like our content guide. So, and was I doing it right, or from what you're saying, what was I missing?
So I don't know that you were missing anything. Sometimes, of course, especially, depending on your CEO and, key stakeholders and what their goals are. I mean, I've worked at companies where the board was asking, why aren't we ranking for these certain terms? So sometimes there are key terms, but typically those are terms that are vital for your brand. It's what your product is. You need to be showing up for that. That is literally what you do. So what I typically have done in the past with like, let's talk about like a key product landing page, for example. We know we want that to rank for one of your key product terms. Give me a V1 of the page. Tell me all the things you want to say. And then we work together, maybe 2, 3 rounds of revisions, depending on how complex it is, to make sure that those titles are optimized. Sometimes we can even tweak the design a bit of the page to make sure that we're getting the terms in there in a way that doesn't disrupt the flow. So it's both kind of robot and human friendly. And that's the sweet spot, is working together. So I think there are times where you do have to start with keywords, but still the product messaging, the way you're talking to your customers, and now with FAQs being so important, when we're talking about product FAQs, I prefer to start with literally, what are your actual customers asking you on sales calls? What are those? Let's put those in your FAQs, start there. So that's kind of like where I would, it's got to be collaborative. I think that's really the answer.
I
And
think
something
all
I'm curious,
PMM.
is like, have you found, AI search and, AEO has made this type of optimization like more human forward because we're, ultimately optimizing for real queries that people feel they want to ask.
Yeah. Totally, for sure. Now we're thinking about questions people are typing into Chat GPT, and if they're logged in, that their GPT interface is going to have all kinds of info about what company they're at, what their job title is. So having more landing pages, literally more URLs on the page that are speaking specifically to those different ICPs, those different use cases, that can be really helpful. So again, collaborative. I've got to talk to product marketing and ask you, what are our key use cases? What are we hearing from our customers that really stands out about our product? And let's make sure we're talking about that on the website in a way that is well laid out and the sitemap lines up and stuff like that.
One common refrain I used to hear like in-house when I was working with teams as a product marketer is that, oh, our buyers will figure it out. And one
Mm.
way where I've seen that show up in like our like websites, for instance, was that like when I was in sales, like let's say like we write a keyword ranking for website design. And I would get these leads that come in and are really interested about website design. But like, what if our website doesn't answer those questions related to website design? It just kind of sprinkled in those keywords. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because when I did a recent like V1A like AEO visibility scan of like just random websites, I mean like, hey, like are we answering the questions that buyers are asking in like Reddit and then on like G2? And several of them partially covered that. And I'm curious, like Nikiya, like when you were working with teams, they come and say, "Hey, here are keywords." But like, what are the key questions that you want these teams to answer from buyers to then make sure that the traffic they get in actually converts versus them coming to you and be, "Yo, Nikiya, like we got some high traffic, but they're hitting our
Mm.
wall like a college bouncer. Like, what's going on?"
Yeah, so Jacob actually might be able to speak to this a little bit more too about kind of our UX and CRO design projects, especially at BX. But that's where SEO it overlaps with CRO and page design and UX design and all of these things. And this is again why SEO really needs to work collaboratively with all of your teams, because once we're getting traffic to the page, we need to look at how are they converting? Do we have good CTAs? Do we have a good journey on the page? So we answered a couple questions. We think they might have some follow-up questions. Do we want a pop-up on the page to say, hey, like at a certain point, they've spent this much time on the page. Do we have some sort of chat feature that pops up so they can interact with that and then we can convert them? Or do we want to just have some, CTA buttons on the page? There's a bunch of ways to go about that, but those are all things you need to think about with these landing pages.
It's funny because that reminds me, I think when it really comes down to it, the CRO needs to own the website because, particularly in B2B, a lot of companies are surviving without SEO traffic. Of course, it's amazing if you can get it, but, businesses have succeeded without it. And in B2B, a lot of the best leads are coming because they know you through like broader marketing or a relationship. And, the messaging on the website can help, but they're often going to convert regardless of the messaging or, whether, and they aren't coming in on SEO. So it's like if they can't convert, if there isn't a clear, contact button in the nav, if the contact page is broken, or they just don't even know how to find it, then you're losing your best leads, which are the leads who would have, hired you anyway. So I think yeah, sorry guys. I think I'm not saying, or I'd be love to hear, does product marketing typically own CRO or like who owns that in your guys' work?
It's a really good point. Like this is in like what the 20 minutes we've been speaking, the first time we mentioned the CRO.
Hmm.
And and they are such an incredible ally when it comes to product marketing. Like here's an example is that when we are talking, like let's say we're talking to demand gen or we're talking to like the CEO and they're like, hey, like we want to talk about AI. We need to lead with AI in our messaging. And then we're kind of, and we come in with research and say, hey, like, actually, it's not really AI they're interested in. They're trying to
Hmm.
figure out how to it fits within their workflow. Typically, the CRO is going to be the tiebreaker. They're going to come in and say, hey, this is actually what we're hearing on calls. this is what we're actually struggling with. These are the questions too. So no, like Jacob, that's a really good call out.
Yeah, that's funny. That reminds me of like no offense if anyone here is from Intuit or QuickBooks, but like the QuickBooks homepage, like even as a user of the product, like I go to that, I'm like this is accounting software? You know, it's like they're and you see this like across like tech right now. Everyone's leaning into like an AI first positioning and like that's great, but often it's like they're taking 10% of the product and making it their hero messaging, you know, because product marketing is getting so excited about, you know, the latest wave, you know, just like the stock market is. So, you know, interesting trying to combat. I think, and that's maybe also where you know SEO could you know help combat some of that, being like, hey, you know, our trap, you know, people aren't searching for this, you know. And Nikki, you actually brought that up. We were even debating like, what do we call our AI search services? You know, AEO, GEO, AI search, and what's so interesting is like Nikiya's SEO perspective helps us identify, like in a from a Google Trends type perspective, what are people actually thinking about and searching for? What do people call this? And I think, you know, that's something product marketing could learn a lot from because then you're not conceiving of your product as something that's like, you know, alienated from the market or like that average buyer.
Yeah,
Well,
leaning on search
I would
volume.
argue that the reason that you can't tell what QuickBooks and Intuit says is because the CRO has their hands in the website and that they are more obsessed with the AI stuff than the people
Mm.
who own the messaging and then should also
Oh,
be in charge of the website.
wait, were you thinking chief revenue officer? Because I meant conversion rate optimization. That's
Oh, well,
funny.
there
Yeah.
we go. That's why we don't use
Yeah. See,
acronyms.
Yeah.
yes, we don't use. I thought it was the chief like revenue officer. You see what
Yeah.
happened here? This
I'll
is why
Yeah.
just
we don't
throw it in
lead
the
with.
chat
This is
rather.
why you gotta rely on SEO to figure out what to call it, because you might be calling it something that doesn't connect with your audience. You know?
Saying
We were
acronym
speaking
in
keywords
tech
whole
is
time.
just too complicated anyway.
Yeah.
You know, we always got those letters all around, and everyone thinks it's something different. But yeah,
Hmm. I mean, this is funny because another argument is, you know, the highest paid person in the room, the HIPPO owns the website, and that's probably the CRO, you know, or the CEO, you know, like one of those two. So, you know,
Well, yeah, and I think I like that too. Like, I like the idea of SEO getting with product marketing and then going and challenging the hippos because I think that's a
mm,
great recipe for success of like,
mm,
okay, here's what we need to call our product. This is what people are searching for, and we will ruin our positioning and our messaging if we decide to just call us some random category that we aren't.
mm,
Um, and having that research back, which truthfully, as a product marketer, I don't feel comfortable finding that type of research in terms of like keyword search. I can do more of the sales conversations and the product discovery type conversations. But I really like that idea of being able to just partner up and then bring those findings to the hippos and saying, all right, calm down, we've done our thing. So we need more Nikiyas. Product marketers don't have enough Nikiyas.
Thanks.
Oh, Gab, you got your hand up.
yeah, and it's not for me; it's for Sal. He had a question for a couple of minutes. Uh, if you're down, we can answer it.
Let's
Let
do it.
me. Can I click answer live? Okay. I'll read a question for you all. Who owns the final messaging? If product marketer has the product knowledge, do they pass to content slash SEO knowing that it may get diluted into keywords? Or does content slash SEO gives the keywords to product marketer to let them tell the story working with those?
That's a great one. So does it start with the messaging and then move to keywords? Does it start with keywords and then move to messaging? Nikiya.
Yeah, I'd say so it depends on the page, right? But I would say if we're talking like product, service, use case, landing pages, in my ideal scenario, product marketing is first and final. So you tell me what you want to say, you tell me what makes sense. I take that, I run with it, I do a bunch of keyword research, I come back to you, I tell you, hey, there's volume around this terminology. There's this similar term that has more volume. Do you want to talk about the product this way instead? Sometimes the answer is yes, let's pivot our product like messaging. Sometimes the answer is absolutely not. We don't want to call ourselves this. We're different. And then the conversation becomes okay, we're going to say, oh, we're going to use the language we want to for these pages. We acknowledge that there's not going to be as much search volume for that. That's okay. We're going to start re-educating our audience on the terms we want to be known for. So then that can inform blog strategy or educational materials for the website. And now you're writing, what's the difference between X and Y? Why is our product different? And that actually can be fuel for a lot more very useful content.
The terms that we want to be ranked for, but it's also almost like a mixed positioning play, because positioning is, hey, this is right in my box, this is where we want to be, so we're all working together to get to that destination, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think
Cool.
just to tie into there too, Sal, like, the core message, the thought, right, that you want to get across, or the point that you want to get across. I like starting there, and then I would let the content team go pick the right words to make sure that message is conveyed. But I hold a lot less tightly on which words are being used, as long as the thought, the message, the point is the exact same. Like if the core message is you nudge your partner while you're at a party and you're like, I want to leave. You can be like, it's time to go. Or you could be like, let's do an Irish exit, right? Like two completely different word choices you're using, but the message is the exact same. Like we got to skedaddle. So that's where I kind of lead with it. Like if the content expert has done their research and figured out which words we need to use, I'm cool as long as the thought and the point is getting across.
And then one thought I want to add on here, I think we might be thinking the same thing. If not, I'm just going to throw it out there, is that the CEO has to own it, like the final message. Because I've been in scenarios where it's like product marketing can build the perfect messaging, all the teams can be aligned on it, and then the CEO comes in like a wrecking ball and says it in a different way, and then it starts creating confusion. So at the end of the day, whoever builds it, but the CEO has to be the final person that says, like, I believe in this. I'm gonna run with it. I'm gonna be the champion of
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
it's
totally agree with
interesting,
that.
right?
I've definitely
Whoever
seen
can create
similar things.
alignment. Oh, you, Nikiya?
it. Causing
Sorry.
division amongst the teams. That's what I love right now. This is why product marketers are gonna own this website.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I've definitely seen situations where SEO and product marketing content all worked really closely, came up with language that everybody agreed on. They liked it, and the CEO said, no, we don't want to call our product that. And so now I've learned to ask first if we have CEO buy-in on key terminology before we all run with it. Because sometimes that's just, that's really important. The CEO has a vision for what they want the product to be called or what their category is, or they see their, product carving out a new niche within a category, and you got to know that up front.
How much of it is like research of like, hey, this is how the market is perceiving you, versus like the CEO coming in and say, this is our end vision and we should only speak to this. Like, because I felt that friction too of like, here where we are now versus this is where we want to be later.
Yeah, in my experience, that depends a lot on maturity of the company. So that conversation for like a seed stage company that's still kind of working out messaging, figuring out where they fall within the competitive market, that's going to be a very different conversation than like a Series C company where they've got some reps, they already have a good amount of brand traffic built up, and there is a way that the market is talking about them. Then it's, are we happy with this or do we want to change it? So it depends.
Something I really like that Nikiya's pioneered at BX is what we're calling like the AI search scientific method. And, it's downstream of an SEO. Often it is very iterative. You have a thesis, you launch it, you analyze the data. And I think that also great product marketing ideally is downstream of some type of like, testing with like actual customers and users of like, does this positioning resonate? Like which one is clear, which one is more effective. And I think it's interesting that and maybe like the best positioning is actually owned by the researchers, because they're beholden to the actual, customers and users.
I'm
Oh yeah, if
curious.
you're not doing research and just doing positioning, then good luck.
Yeah, you're getting in deep trouble. We have another question here from Frankie, I believe. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name. It's the French Canadian accent. If PMM owns SEO direction, what's the best format for sharing that with the SEO/content team? So it translates into an actual scalable SEO strategy across products.
I think that's for
Yeah.
Nikiya. How do you like getting delivered messaging from product marketing?
It's a great question. I honestly, so when I start working with someone, I just want all of the kind of key messaging you have. Give me a document with a breakdown of what our key product messaging is. I want all of our, ICPs, our persona data, our use cases. Give me everything you have. This is like our holy grail of what we need to be saying and how we talk about our product. And then it's really just about keeping me in the loop as it changes. I think again, collaborative. So whether it's once a month or once a quarter or once a week, depending on, how fast your company is growing and how quickly things are changing, just keeping a tight feedback loop there. And that's why I refer to the writer's resource as a writer's wiki, because that implies everybody needs to keep it updated. So as things change, if you're changing product messaging, please add it to the document, that kind of stuff. So really just tight feedback loop, collaboration, that's really the key.
Or maybe work with an expert that can help you do that automatically. Eric, sorry.
Yes.
Plug, yeah, shameless plug. And yeah, I would say too, one thing that I would add to that is like your point of view for sure. Like if there's a specific point of view that you're trying to get across, make sure that is like very clear and not getting muddled up with the SEO practice. Um, the messaging document is great, and I think, you'll see 10 different product marketers, you'll see 11 different ways that they'll ship one of those messaging documents, but making sure that the point of view is crystal clear for that content specialist, that'll, I think, really help out in the long run, regardless of what word choices they want to go with.
So, what type of metrics do you guys think that website owners should be tracking?
Um, personally think the only thing that matters is if they convert to an opportunity. Um, I personally believe that any lead that gets through for a conversation that is not conversation worthy, then we did a bad job as the website. And we should, with our messaging and our positioning, be very clear who we are for and very clear who we are for not. And for all those for nots, they should be bouncing so fast. And for all of the people that we are for, that should be what the website really is catered to. So I really don't believe in conversion rate to demo. I think that should be thrown away completely, and we only look at the conversion rate from website to opportunity.
Okay, so
I would,
SQLs? What would you say?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
just skip the MQL completely.
yeah,
yeah,
Yeah, what
I
is the
agree.
attributed
MQL
revenue or just
honestly?
SQLs?
Sorry, what? Gab?
Attributed revenue, like clear revenue being registered, or just SQLs, like sales opportunities?
Yeah, like sales opportunities. Like they've went through a discovery call, and we have said, "Yep, they are a good fit for us. Let's keep talking."
Hmm.
But if any of those slip through the cracks and the SDR or AE determines, yeah, like they shouldn't have been on here, then I think we did a bad job.
Yes.
Hmm.
Getting the right message across and deterring the wrong people from wasting our salespeople's time.
But isn't
Yeah.
that kind of a like you can't sit with us energy? Like, shouldn't a website
Yes.
be a bit more of like a broad, like top of funnel, like all are welcome
Nope.
here, come on in, and then like, yeah, we might
Here's
like
a good example. I
yeah.
believe your website, particularly the homepage, should be like a storefront. So you're walking down Saks Fifth
Yeah.
Avenue, you look at that storefront, you should know right away, should I walk in this store or not? You don't need
Oh.
to be
Uh,
me wasting time going into a fur coat shop when I'm not going to be buying a fur coat
I
ever.
mean, I've rolled
One,
up to like the Rolex store on Rodeo Drive with like my ragtag friends after brunch. We're wearing like flip-flops and shorts, and like they hold the door open and are like very gracious, because I mean, in LA especially, you never know who's about to like drop like 20K in a watch, so maybe that's like specific to the LA market, but like, it's like,
That's what I mean. Like
yeah,
I'm not buying a Rollie. So like truthfully, if
yeah.
you see me walk into a Rolex store, any salesperson in there should know it's a waste of their time. And I believe that goes
I mean,
extra for our AEs who
look at
are
that wall of shoes though. Like, clearly you're down to
yeah,
drop
I'm
on some
170
cloud.
to a $210 price tag guy, not a 20K price
Yeah,
tag guy.
yeah,
So
more
that's
of
what
a
I mean.
volume play.
I'm
Yeah,
very
but yeah,
adamant about that
yeah.
is there's no reason to be wasting our salespeople's time with people who are not opportunities. And so the website
Hmm.
is the biggest deterrent for that. And if we're letting in too many people who aren't opportunities, and what do we do with our website?
What about like a branching contact form that has like a budget field and you like use that and then you can have like, oh, some people go straight to the Calendly link, some people like I don't know, get tossed maybe back to SDR, like the SDR qualifies before they flip it to the sales. Hmm.
Well, budget is one factor. I think, because of the storefront, that's an easy one to lean on, but
Hmm.
there's so many other things about that, right? Like if we can position ourselves and say we are for this segment, we'll just say enterprise, right? SMBs should not be coming in, right? Mid-market should not be coming in. We've positioned ourselves for enterprise, and that's the people we want coming in. And if we
Hmm.
determine as a business we don't want SMB and we don't want mid-market, then we've done a bad job as a website if those are still trickling in.
That concept of like anti-ICP, especially early on with your go-to-market, is so key because like
Hmm.
you talk to most CEOs and they're like, yeah, but that could be a new deal, that could bring revenue.
Hmm.
Let's go up market. But there's a point when you don't understand that the market is hyper crowded. And the more you say no, the better you're positioning yourself to say yes to better opportunities coming in your way. I agree with what you're saying, Eric. Like, I think the bottom line should be those sales qualified leads. But as someone who do message testing for a living, I think there's some stuff that we can take a look at, such as the time on site, dwell time, scroll depth, heat map, those kind of
Hmm.
stuff. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at that data and it doesn't tell you anything, and you're looking at your pipeline and it's super dry, it's vanity metric at the end of the day. It's just that if you're looking at the specific timeline and you want to understand what impact your messaging has on your website, on your homepage, product pages, all of that, you need to understand the right context on what people are actually doing, even if they're not ready to buy yet.
And I
I
got
think this
I got one
really
more
quick.
thing I
This
want to add, and then
okay. Go.
I want to hear you, and then I definitely got to hear Nikiya because she's got her lip all puffed up. She's like, I gotta say
Yeah.
something. I can see it. So just and also real quick, the downstream effect is this too. Like if you let in one of those opportunities, like Gab was saying, like we could sell this deal. Yes, and sales knows that they could probably sell this deal, but customer success is the one that's going to have to turn them into a happy, repeating customer. And that's a lot of this that we forget about is okay, let's get them on board, let's get them on board, but are we going to ever keep them happy? Are we going to keep them around? And are they going to go have a bad experience and then potentially ruin our brand reputation because we let them in? That's something that we don't think about a
Hmm.
lot because it
Hmm.
is, marketing's more on the let's get them in and let's close them. But there's definitely an effect there that goes well beyond just the signing of the first contract.
Yeah, that reminds me, there's this great agency influencer who says like client churn is actually determined at signing by whether they're an ICP or not. And anyone that's not an ICP is guaranteed to churn. And then, yeah, so yeah, I think it's something businesses don't think enough about of, yeah, you're just inviting trouble.
I think it actually goes aligned to a question Michael just brought up in the chat. Do we want to answer that now or wait towards the end here?
Hmm.
I gotta hear Nikiya first, and then
Go
let's
for it.
let's rip on this question.
Let's go for it.
So not surprisingly, I disagree. No, so okay, look, SQL's super important, CAC super important, and those definitely need to be like your North Star metrics. But if you are only focused on those and you're trying to do SEO, you're leaving money on the table and you're not going to do content that would have brought in good leads. So for me, if we're doing a true organic growth strategy, it's organic. You're trying to show up for people who don't already know about your brand. Those are not going to be branded terms. And they might be coming to your product landing pages, but like they're not coming to your homepage typically. They're coming to your blogs. They're coming to more informational, helpful content that you're putting out in the world. You can't be like hyper focused on your ICP for those. What you want to do is once you get them there, the content needs to whittle out your ICP to conversion. So this is where you have to be very honest about what your ICP is. And I think a lot of companies run into trouble when they try to be too generalist with the content itself. They don't want to talk about who they actually serve really well. So I think the companies that get this right, they're tracking a lot more metrics. So they're looking at impressions, they're looking at traffic, they're looking at, organic clicks, sessions, new users, time on page, all of these holistically to figure out what's working and what journeys are working. And then they're coming up with a smart way to convert their ICP from the content that's going to be helpful for more people than just the people you want to convert. So, kind of referring back to what Jacob said, making sure that your contact forms have qualifying data in there so you can disqualify people who fill out the form who you're not going to be able to help. Another way I recommend kind of helping with this is like competitor teardowns. Be honest about what your strengths and weaknesses are. You can't serve everyone, and it's okay to say that on your website. And I think if you can do all of those things, then actually tracking more metrics. And for me, I need to focus on impressions and those leading indicators to make sure that what we're doing is working because SEO is still a slow burn. It's going to be a few months till we see full build of that. So we need to make sure that we're moving in the right direction early. And if we're not, we need to pivot. So for me, a lot of metrics. It's really hard to just tie myself to one. I do agree that SQLs and CAC, I would say, and CAC, really important downstream. But thank you, Michael. Someone agrees with me.
Yeah, we'll answer his question right away, but because he must have waited for us. But Michael said that if PMM owns the starting point between content and PMM, how do you avoid creating an internal CEO influence echo chamber for product category, key product terms, etc.? He had many instances where they were pushed to optimize the site for terms and categories that meant nothing in the market.
Oh, tell me about this. Okay,
Yeah.
I feel the
I'm
same.
like, yeah, that's a tough one right there. And there's actually a real example I'm actually like dealing with right now with a prospect that I'm talking to, and there's a slight nuance. So here's the context: is that they are in the AI sales tech space, and they have their product, where their product does really well is that they have the AI agent, like does everything behind the scenes. It's gonna do your discovery calls, it's gonna take your meeting notes. And but the problem they're struggling with is that the incumbent in the space are AI sales assistants. These are your Gong, this is like your like Clary, and they're trying to differentiate themselves. So they're like, let's show up for AI sales assistants. But the problem is now it gets convoluted because now their audience is asking the question of like, when would I use an AI sales assistant? Like that's the question coming up. And now they're coming in and say, hey, we're a sales assistant too. And then when you go and talk to them, they're like, oh, I'm an agent. And they're like, I'm still trying to understand like sales assistant, but now you're an agent. How is that different? And they're really struggling in how to decipher between those questions. There's no content in place today that really answers. Here's the difference between a sales assistant and sales agent. When would I use an agent versus a assistant? So like, yeah, like that's just say to relate to that because that creates such a like earlier what we said that down funnel issue. Like when I was in sales, I used to struggle with that too. Like you show up for this keyword, and then it gets really hard to then show how your product supports that keyword. And you're like, I don't know what to do here.
Michael, your project management decided to call work management. So funny. I also have experience in that space, and it's incestuous all of the ways they try to like redefine themselves. Um, and I think really like the onus goes back in on the product marketer to be disciplined and to be able to push back on that CEO influence. And I'd say, from the non-product marketer end, if you're seeing that happen, like I don't think there's too many of us out there who would be hurt for you to kind of call us out on that and be like, hey, why are you using these terms that have no relevance? Help me understand that a little bit more. Where'd you get them from? And there's a likely chance that they'll say, they're getting pressure from the CEO, in which I think then the content team can come in and be like, let me help you fight this fight, right? Here, let me do a little bit of research. I'll get you some answers over the next couple days, and let's set up a meeting with the leadership team. And we can just show our findings and hopefully make it seem like their idea. Because then, if they think it's their idea, then everything will go smooth, as opposed to trying to change their mind about something. So that's how I would definitely try to direct that is first get with the PMM and ask them why they're coming up with all these crazy words. And then you can help them actually get the data and push back. Because that's the one thing that I always struggle with is okay, I've got sales calls, I've got, customer discovery calls that we've had, but I need that search volume data and the things that are people doing when they're just sitting at their keyboard thinking about us.
I wish
I
we could
have a, I have
have
a
Michael on stage with us. Actually, I just want to give him a shout out. Yeah, Michael has a lot of experiences leading web strategy at like large enterprise orgs like Vanta and Bill.com. So I think these challenges of how to like navigate different stakeholders. He probably knows, better. Yeah, that'd be like a really interesting panel to have in the future, Michael. Like to hear more about your experience there.
planting the seed for the next one. A quick question here. And Nikiya, you might be able to give more perspective. I've been hearing some chatter amongst like well, I'm not a marketer, but marketing peers, and they're getting questions from their CEOs to write, not questions, requests to write more GEO articles. And the chatter they're hearing from
Mm.
their CEO is that, hey, like, hey, marketer, I spoke to my friend and they said their GEO articles are killing it. They're showing up on ChatGPT, people are clicking and driving in. And I want you to go do that too. How is that different from SEO today? Like, and what's your take on
Oh, that's a whole can of worms. So okay, try to simplify it. So from my perspective, and I think a lot of SEOs would agree, GEO, AEO, again, whatever we want to call it, there's a lot of commonality with SEO. A lot of the things that are good for GEO, AEO have always been good for SEO too. So your structured data, your schema, your FAQs. This is stuff that I've been recommending for years. We've been doing this with clients. The exact implementation of that is a bit different now. And the good news for people like me is that this is getting all kinds of attention now. It used to be I would bring up schema and structured data on a call and they would be like, what's that? And now everybody knows what it is. They're like, we need this. They're coming to calls and they know what that is. So for me, this is great. Um, I think when it comes to GEO content, my first response is always to ask the client or whoever I'm working with what that looks like to them. Because again, a lot of these are things that SEOs have been doing for a while. So it's really about understanding what is in the person who's asking for this, what's in their mind, what's their goal. If they want to show up in GPT, it's a lot of the same organic strategy as we used to have for Google search. Is just it's kind of the Wild West now. So there's some key differences like Google gives us search volume, Google Trends. With OpenAI and GPT and these LLMs, we don't have that data yet. So the way people are actually coming up with estimates for prompt volume is a bit convoluted and it's an emerging field, so we're all kind of working on this together. I would say as far as GEO content goes, I would say the way I have seen it work best so far is when it is paired with a really strong SEO strategy. So if you're doing really good SEO, you can layer on GEO with that and you can get a lot of mileage out of it. If you don't have good SEO fundamentals in place, jumping right to GEO is going to be tough.
All right, so looks like we're coming up on time. Thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you at the next one. If anyone has any other comments, go ahead.
Thank you so much for participating.
Thanks,
that?
everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. All right. See you all. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye bye.